The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to No Credentials Required, where you don't need a press pass to talk sports. We're presented by the Belly Up Media Network, loud and proud, coming to you live from, upstate New York, I guess.
Yeah.
But here we are. Once again, it's Tuesday at 8:05 p.m. Eastern. Got a great show tonight, but before I do that, just want to... forgot to introduce myself. My name's Ryan McCarthy. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and to my right is a man who loves himself some smoked meat and some poutine, Dustin Henry. Dustin, how are we doing tonight?
That's right. I do. I'm doing well. I worked out right now, although you were being much more smart with your hydration choices in the green room. I saw you drinking a water there. I'm drinking El Presidente. After my workout,
it's not Cerveza Cristal.
Yeah, I got to get my hands on some of that. Apparently, a store near my house sells it, so I had to go in there and check that out. But I'm doing all right. I'm feeling a little ahead of the game. It feels good to get back into no ticket required. We got a lot of other stuff to talk about tonight too. I'm feeling good. And before the show, I just found this very funny. I was listening to a band that I heard like a snippet of the song on Instagram. I'm like, I'm going to check that out. Their band name is Microwave, and the song I was listening to was Vomit. So it just some of the song titles cracked me up. But on that note, how are you tonight, sir?
Well, I'm not listening to a band named Microwave and a song called Vomit.
No,
it's a good day. It's a good weekend. It was a good weekend. It was a good day. I got to be on the radio today with my guys Levac and Gosh. Shout out to them.
Awesome.
They were at Mohawk Chevrolet, which is right down the road from me. So I stopped there with a couple of gifts and was on one of the segments today. So you may, I'm not going to brag, but I think Gaz wants to to do like an extended thing with me sometime soon. So I don't know if it's going to be in the radio, if it's going to be a podcast. I invited them for the next one of the next Saturday brunches. So
nice.
Back on the air. So
all right, I'm down. I'd be into it, man.
But otherwise, good. I'm excited. We're back in summer. It's almost summer. It's this close to summer. We're a couple of days away from summer, but we're starting our summer movie series earlier this year, as opposed to last year when we kind of got close to football season. But we're here now, so let's get into it in just a couple of minutes. But we're gonna get into it in a moment or two. But before we do that, just want to remind you about our social media channels right down here below: Twitter, Instagram, and the scarcely used TikTok. It's at NoCredsREQ. Facebook.com/NoCredsREQ. YouTube.com/@NoCredsREQ. If you're watching the next day on Rumble, 8 a.m. Eastern on Rumble, we welcome you. If you're listening on 502 American Angel Radio, Wednesdays at 8 a.m., we welcome you. And coming soon, probably next week, I have to say, we're going to be in our buddy Wise El Jefe. Big shout out to him if he's watching. We're going to be on his radio, his live radio, Real Wise Radio. So you can check us out there. That will be starting. Let me just double check the times here as we confirm this afternoon. We'll be on at Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern, and Sunday afternoons at 12 p.m. Eastern. So he's got a lot of spots to fill, but he says, welcome to be on our show was welcome to be on there, and we're gonna be a proud part of Real Wise Radio very soon.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. I'm honored to be on the airwaves on Wise's radio network. Big friend of the show, and love having him on when he's on. And I think we've already announced this, but he will be joining us for one of our movie reviews here on No Ticket Required.
That's right. That's right. You know what? We might as well play. We might as well shout out his PSA while we're at it. Since we're talking about, we might as well shut him out. after I played, of course, the usual like, comment, share, and subscribe to all of our social media channels right down here below. But yeah, let's give him a quick shout out.
The following is a public service announcement from Wise El Jefe,
Boston.
This has been a public service announcement from Wise El Jefe.
God, I love that.
It's not going to get old to me. It's just like the list drop. The list drop. I'm going to be laughing every time.
Every time.
We will be bringing back subsequent editions of the list.
Yes. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Of course, the Chris Jericho intro.
Yeah.
On the podcast side, if you listen on the podcast side today, I gotta tell you, podcast listeners, we had a really great month of May. We had a really good bump in our listenership. But we want to remind you to not only just keep listening, but also subscribe. Subscribe to the podcast, Apple Pod, Spotify, Spreaker, Good Pods, iHeart, TuneIn, wherever you podcast. Subscribe. Not only we don't want just your listens, we also want your subscriptions because we want you to follow us. We want you to be a part of the Credhead crew. We want you to be a part of the Credheads Club.
Yes, and of course, while you're at it, subscribe to our channel on YouTube and also subscribe to Belly Up on YouTube. They got a lot of great content over at the channel. There's more than just our show to check out.
Absolutely, we got plenty of. Plenty of shows. We got a lot of shows on pod. It's not just us.
Yeah,
it's not just us in the podcast network. It's also the Belly Up podcast. We've had friends of the show who are other podcasts who have been part of the show. Jared,
Corner Booth
podcast. Kevin Wilson, part of the Fantasy family. We're trying to bring back some. Daniel Smooth from.
Daniel Smooth. Can't forget Daniel. Love talking Seahawks with him and Kevin when they're on. And also we've had Josh from the Rising to the Occasion pod. So there's plenty to check out over there because I will say it. I'm not a fan of college football, but if you are, there's plenty on the Belly Up Network for you to follow. And if you follow a specific team too. There's a lot for I know we have some Detroit sports fans. There's a lot for Detroit sports fans on Belly Up. Tons of stuff.
Absolutely. And if you're on a podcast, and also when you subscribe, leave us a 5-star rating because for every rating that we get, it just helps our profile. Also, if you're on a platform where you can review the podcast, review it, we might even read it on the air. I mean, some platforms like Good, I believe Good Pods has you can write a review on Good Pods. You also write a review on Apple Podcasts. You can't really so much do it on Spotify or some of the other podcast channels, but the other podcast platforms. But if you're on a platform where you can rate and review, review, please leave us a review. We might even read it on the air. And because we're a live show every Tuesday at 8:05 p.m. Eastern, we've already got some in the comments section, but.
Of course.
Engage with the show. Engage with our show. We want your comments, Dustin. I know it's been a week, but we got to play that magical sound to remind the folks at home, whether they're watching live or on replay, to leave us a comment. Let's play that magical sound.
Yeah.
That's right, folks. And we'll take a look at some of the comments. And actually, Sapna was in here right before the show started, saying "Sports Ball" and giving us the pink hand of Sapna. Dr. Lady's back. She's been in and out last couple of shows, but she says, "Hey guys," and she also has a question for us. We'll get to that. Actually, we'll talk about that in a later segment. We'll talk about that a little bit later because we're going to be doing a movie review first. But she asked what our thoughts about the over-reliance in the bullpen these days.
I have thoughts.
Ben has, exactly. Dustin has thoughts. I've got thoughts. I think we can blame one particular club for over-reliance on bullpen, and it's not the New York Yankees. And Playmaker checking in says, Ryan and Dustin, what's good, fellas? And she even said she left the Dodgers game for us.
Oh man,
right now. This is devotion, folks.
Yeah, that's serious devotion. I mean, Dr. Lady
I would say one of the OG Credheads.
That's right. Yes. And you've blown me away with that. I mean, did you at least have yourself a Dodger dog before you left? I don't know.
Well, the Dodgers are playing in Pittsburgh tonight.
Excuse my ignorance.
That's okay.
But there's somebody else that we're going to talk about later who apparently loves Pittsburgh because.
Well, he loved Pittsburgh, but
yes, past tense.
We'll talk about it past tense.
I love it. I love the line.
I love it. All right. Well, you came here for what you came for, but we're going to start our summer movie review series starting tonight. Let's go ahead and play that awesome bumper that I made.
It's very good.
All right, we're going to review the first. This will be the first of our 8-week reviews. And tonight we're going to talk about the 2011 hockey movie Goon. And I have watched Goon before. I have I actually bought the DVD when it came out back in 2011, 2012. And I'm a big fan of this movie because I love hockey. Hockey's a big part of my life. Whether as a fan, for covering it, as a media member, or being a chaplain for a hockey team, I love hockey. I'm probably the only person in my family who actually appreciates and loves the game. But I've watched. I remember hearing about this movie on the podcast. One of my favorite podcasts from back in the day, Merrick versus Wyshynski. As one of my favorite podcasts from back in the day. It's actually the one of the primary podcasts that got me into podcasts. This is it's one of the shows that kicked up my love for podcasting so much that I wanted to do it myself. So shout out to Greg Wyshynski, Jeff Merrick back in the day. I missed that show dearly. And part of the reason why the show doesn't exist anymore because Greg Wyshynski's now was with Yahoo at the time. Now he's with ESPN. He's their senior hockey writer. And Jeff Merrick, who has been with Sportsnet for a very long time in Canada, he's on with the Hockey Night in Canada panel. He also has his own show, has two shows, the Jeff Merrick Show and 32 Thoughts with Elliot Friedman. And Elliot Friedman, one of the best hockey beat writers, hockey insiders in the game today. One of the best. And that podcast really sparked my love for podcasting. So it's not just a love story in terms of podcasting and showing my love for the podcast platform, for the podcast medium, but I heard about this movie on their podcast because they interviewed Jay Baruchel, who was one of the writers, one of the stars of the movie, and he talked about it and talked about how he loved hockey growing up. Grew up in Montreal. And I think it's Notre Dame de Grace, which is primarily English-speaking neighborhood in Montreal and Westmount. But this movie is based on a true story too. This is why he made the movie. It was based on a true story, based on a book he read by a gentleman named Doug the Hammer Smith, who played hockey. And that's what this movie is based off of. It's based off of the true story of Doug the Hammer Smith, who didn't play hockey until his, I want to say, mid to late 20s. And people knew he was a brawler. He was I believe he was a boxer.
Oh.
And they said, all right, let's get you on skates. Get you playing amateur. And he actually wound up he played in some of the lower levels of senior hockey in New Brunswick, played in the ECHL with the Johnstown Chiefs, also made his way all the way up to the AHL for a couple of games. He was with the Springfield Condors, I believe it was. I'll look at eliteprospects.com. The Springfield Condors, the Cape Breton Oilers. He was there for a cup of coffee back in the day, but he spent most of his brawling days in the ECHL. I have to wonder if he had any fights with with the former the last head coach of the Albany Devils, Rick Kowalski, who was also in this ECHL, I believe, we played with Carolina, the Carolina Thunderbirds.
Oh.
And this is when the ECHL was known as kind of a lower level Goon league before it was AA hockey, like with all the teams that they're affiliated with now. Because now they're kind of like a AA minor league system.
Yeah.
As opposed to the AHL is AAA. But I have to wonder if he fought. And I wish I had the foresight to try to get him on the show and see if he fought good old Rick Kowalski, who's a good friend, who's a friend and coach, who was coach of the last head coach of the Albany Devils in Albany AHL history. So, but enough of my babbling. Dustin, I want to get your thoughts on the movie because I think this was the first time you've seen Goon.
Yes, this was the inaugural voyage for me, and I knew that you had a love for this movie. Now, I was able to watch this on Pluto. Shout out to Pluto. So I had some commercials in there, but I was able to catch it on Pluto, and immediately, and I almost second guessed myself, but then I was very confident. I spotted former Oilers brawler George Laraque. Immediately, I was like, that is George Laraque, man. I'm sitting there, I'm going, that is George Laraque. I couldn't believe it. So anytime a movie includes real players and they're like really playing the sport, that gets props from me. I do enjoy that. Now, I liked the opening sequence. Music selection is usually big in a movie for me. I think this movie does a good job with music selection. But the opening sequence showed how downtrodden Doug Glatt really was, the main character. You could tell he was kind of the outcast of his family. He's working security at a bar. And you can tell he's just dejected, taking out the trash. We've seen this narrative before with some other movies, but it was done well here. And you do empathize, at least I did, with Doug almost from the opening. He's trying to find himself. Highlights of the movie for me: Jay Baruchel was the perfect, annoying but supportive friend. I did like his show Hot Ice. I thought that was a good moment in the movie. And I felt like the more I was watching the movie, the more I felt that casting Sean William Scott was a great move, because I really think that he is the only one that could have pulled off that lead with some of the dialogue and things that he has to say and make it somewhat believable, and so that you still empathize with him, because he makes the comment, like during the E.T. Belly speech. I'm trying to keep spoilers light in case anybody wants to go out and watch this movie, but some of that dialogue, it wouldn't have been believable from anyone else but Sean William Scott. If you know who he is, if you've seen the American Pie movies, he's Stifler. If you've seen Road Trip, he is also in that movie. And he's also in Dude, Where's My Car? Is he not, with Ashton?
Yep.
Kutcher?
Yes, he is.
So this is the type that you're getting, and I think he does a good job of making it believable, because at points he is so thick in this movie, and so his brain cells are working hard, but you still have a respect for him. There was one quote that kind of surprised me when he said, "When you deserve a beating, you take one."
Mm-hmm.
And so that you did empathize with him, and things. There were shades of this movie that reminded me of some other movies. Like the rage sequences when he would get very mad, especially in the beginning when he tries out for the assassins. Mm-hmm. It reminded me of Waterboy or Happy Gilmore, especially when he sidekicked one of his teammates right in the junk with his skate, which I visibly flinched on my couch from that. But I do have to say, the weakness of this movie for me, and here's where you might have a problem with me, Ryan. The B love story plot that happens in this movie, it was the weak point of the movie for me. I felt like this movie could have done without that. And I realized that it was there for comedic. There was supposed to be some comedy. It was supposed to give some depth to the Doug Glatt character and show other aspects of his personality. But it just didn't land all that much for me.
I will say, yeah, you're definitely right. The love story was a little dry at times because it's sort of predictable too.
Yeah,
you knew it was
of
happen.
course.
As soon as they had the date where she says, "I'm a terrible girlfriend."
Yep.
I'm a boyfriend.
Yes.
You kind of knew where it was going, mm-hmm. But I think it added a little bit extra pepper here and there.
Yeah. The movie, and because you couldn't just go. I mean, if they went complete sports sequences, I don't know what else you could have done with the movie.
And another thing too. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
not a problem.
How some sports movies have very gratuitous sex scenes in them.
Yes.
Socks scenes. Trying to clean it up for YouTube and for Twitter here. But this didn't have it. Didn't have it. I mean, there were some scenes where the players were making out with women in the bar, but it wasn't gratuitous. It wasn't real. Except for that one scene, well, actually the two scenes, but it wasn't. But there were flashes. They weren't real. They weren't extended.
Yeah, and I will say, for a movie of this ilk, I think the audience that it's shooting for, and probably the age group that it's shooting for, it didn't lean into that like some other movies would have. And I felt that the highlights of this movie for me, I like the fact that they had the I'll call him to get a little British for a second, I'll call him the cheeky announcer. I like that. the shades of Bob Uecker in Major League, and I liked it. Was a nice touch because, let's face it, in the sports scenes, announcers are a huge part of the movie, and they can help. They can help. And the one quote that stood out for me was that was borderline treasonous when somebody does a particularly horrific version of "Oh Canada." So, and then the big
my grandfather didn't kick the Nazis, and we're a face-off, one by the Steelers.
Yeah. So that was a highlight for me. And then, as with sports movies, and this is going to be a theme, I'm calling my shot now because I talked about it last year during No Ticket Required. In order for a sports movie to hit, it has to have good sports sequences, and it has to make you root for the lead. If it doesn't make you root for the lead, then it's going to fall flat. And Goon did manage to do that. The sequence that was particularly well done, in my opinion, in this movie was the buildup between the penultimate fight. And again, I will keep spoilers light in case somebody wants to watch this movie, but I thought that was really well done. But other than that, we're going to have to see where this movie ranks for me. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't, I wouldn't, it is not a movie, in my opinion, that I would do like repeat viewing over and over. If the mood strikes me and I want to see a hockey movie, I will probably reach for Miracle from last year's reviews, but I would give this another spin. And
well, I was gonna say, lucky for you, there is a sequel.
I did see there's a sequel. Maybe we'll put that on year 3 of No Ticket Required, because we gotta come up with sports movies. But I mean, overall, I'll see where it ranks. This is the first movie in our movie overview coming out here. So for now, it's number 1. But I cede the floor to you because I know you have a lot to say, and I've prattled on now.
That's okay. Well, I mean, in the second segment, you're gonna be talking a lot because we're talking about your Dallas Mavericks, because the NBA Finals start on Thursday. So.
Yes.
All right. So I forgot this part of the run. It was in the rundown. There's some trivia. There's some cool facts, and we'll do these for every single movie too. We'll do these for every single movie. Here's some facts in regards to the movie Goon, and this is via IMDb. It states the film is based on the book Goon, the true story of an unlikely journey into minor league hockey by Adam Frattasio and Douglas Smith, who we who I talked about before. Footage from Smith's career as a hockey enforcer is shown during the film's credits. There's a couple more here. There's not that many. Sean William Scott gained weight for the role of Doug Glatt, as well as taking intensive skating lessons and fighting on ice.
Props to Sean William Scott for that, because a lot of people could have not taken this movie seriously, but if he put the time in to learn how to skate and also fight on skates, big props to him, because it helps make the movie believable.
Yeah. And I would have to think that Doug Smith had a hand in the choreography for the fighting, because at the end of the movie, it states, during the end credits, it mentions that he's a hockey fighting instructor.
Oh,
so
wow.
I suspect there's a lot of pros out there who probably get a lot of tips from him on how to fight, not just how to fight, but also fight effectively.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Doug did. Kirk Heilbach, who plays the role of Halifax's play-by-play announcer, is actually a former NHL play-by-play announcer.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked it up, and Kirk Heilbach was actually the radio voice for the Winnipeg Jets, and when they moved to this is the OG Winnipeg Jets. This is the WHA, and then NHL absorption Winnipeg Jets, and then when they moved to Phoenix to become the Coyotes, and then they became the Coyotes, he stayed on as their radio play-by-play guy. So that's why he has that distinctive voice as the announcer in the film.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't know that, and that shows another level of care by Jay Baruchel and the crew on this movie.
Yep. And I got two more facts left before I kind of go into my thoughts. A great majority of the cast is comprised by Canadian actors, including the well-established actors in Hollywood like Jay Baruchel, Kim Coates, who plays the coach, Allison Pill, who plays a love interest, and Eugene Levy of SCTV fame. The only non-Canadians in major roles are Minnesota native, aforementioned Sean William Scott, and New Yorker Liev Schreiber. Ironically, Baruchel plays an American character, a thickly accented Massachusetts native in the film, while Schreiber plays a Canadian character. Which, and I noted this in our show notes. I know that fact in our show notes. And the fact that Liev Schreiber was actually signed on to play the antagonist of this film is akin to Sir Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Or Max von Sydow as the antagonist, Brewmeister Smith, in Strange Brew. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Strange Brew or not.
That's another one. It's been a long time for me.
It's not a sports movie. It's more of a comedy, but we'll have to watch it some night. We'll have it. I won't say that's not terrible. We won't have it for terrible movie night, because it's not a terrible movie.
Yeah, no, we still gotta I gotta get my head out of my behind and get that terrible movie night going. But we'll get a list together. I think Velocipaster is gonna be number one.
Can't wait for that one.
And to shout out to the cred heads, if you guys want to watch along and we can give our thoughts on Velocipaster, go ahead.
We might have to do a live stream on Discord. This might be a Discord only. By the way, join our Discord. Join our Discord. It's in the show. It's in the Facebook and it's in the Facebook description, the YouTube description, and it'll be in the podcast description as well. The last fact that IMDb gives us says Jerry Baruchel wanted to adapt the book into a film after noticing a lack of hockey comedies in recent years. So that's the primary. I mean, you've got some hockey comedies out there. I mean, the only hockey comedy I can really think of off the top of my head is Slapshot.
Yeah, that was the first one that came to my mind.
Yeah, and in the show notes, I did note one thing that IMDb did not have, and in the movie there's a certain scene when we find out that Ross Ray, who's played by Schreiber, gets sent down in the minors after clubbing another player during a hockey game. This was based on that was actually based off the infamous Marty McSorley clubbing incident on Donald Brashear on February 21st, 2000, in a game between Boston and Vancouver. And I know, Dustin, you were you may or may not have remember. I don't think you were. When did you start following hockey? Because I'm not sure if you knew about that incident.
It was around this time, but I'm gonna say that it was when I really started following hockey was a year later in 2001. Okay. So I had heard about this and I knew about this, and it's funny because I remember Donald Brashear as kind of a brawler himself on the Capitals.
Yeah,
that's what I remember.
The Capitals, Canadians, I want to say Vancouver. Yeah, aforementioned Vancouver, because Masorda was playing for Boston at the time. That's when that's when his career. I think that's when his career actually ended, because he was suspended for a year. He was also charged with assault in Vancouver for that incident.
Well, and it makes sense, and that's thanks for pointing that out, because when I first saw the scene, I wondered if it was based on Todd Bertuzzi, and I can't remember the.
No, that was the Bulldog incident on, I believe it was Dominic Moore.
Okay, yep, I couldn't remember the Avs player that would. And when was that? Was that like
Steve Moore?
Steve Moore. Was that like a year later, or
was that was in 2004?
Oh, okay. So
and that was basically a sucker punch from behind and a subsequent Bulldog that ended Steve Moore's career, and Todd Bertuzzi. They also went to that happened in Vancouver.
Yeah, he had he had the suspension as a result of that.
He was also suspended. He was also charged with assault. That was one of the only times. It's one of the only times you saw in hockey that a player was charged with assault after an incident like this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was the basis of the incident of Ross Ray getting sent down back to St. John's to face Halifax in that penultimate sequence. It's a penultimate act when Doug and Ross face off at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess I've seen this before. I try to look for new Easter eggs. Every time I watch it, anytime I watch a movie repeatedly, I try to find new Easter eggs throughout the movie. Like for instance, during the scene when was it Doug and his friend were on his friend's show Hot Ice?
Yeah,
you kind of noticed in the background there was a set of another show because it was a public service. It was a public
access,
public access television. You notice in the background there's another set. I think it was for India Today. Let's see. Another thing the fact that, again, I mentioned this before about mentioning it again, the fact that Liev Schreiber plays the antagonist in this movie. It's kind of like Alec Guinness playing Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, because nobody really knew who Harrison Ford, unless you were a George Lucas film fan from back in the day, with whether it was American Wax or
American Graffiti.
American Graffiti. Thank you, American Graffiti. Mm-hmm. Yeah, American Graffiti or THX 380 or 2, whatever that was. The movie was called. You didn't know who Harrison Ford was. We didn't know who Carrie Fisher was unless you knew she was Debbie Fisher's daughter. You didn't know who Mark Hamill was. You didn't know who any of these people were, because a lot of these people were British actors. So you knew who Alec Guinness was. He was on Bridge on the River Kwai and amongst other notable movies. You know who Max Van Sydow was, and him playing a part in as Brewmaster Smith in Strange Brew was one of the biggest acting surprises ever. George Laraque and other NHL players, Mike Ricci, formerly of the San Jose Sharks, most famously for the San Jose Sharks. He was in this movie as well. He was a center for the Halifax Highlanders. George Laraque was in the first scene of the movie when he's fighting Ross Ray. He's also fighting Doug Glatt. He's in this movie, and the fact that there was a team called the Albany Patriots in this movie was also hysterical. I want an Albany Patriots jersey with the character that George Laraque played. I want his name and his jersey number and name of the pack.
Yeah, we should definitely do that, because I thought the same thing. I was like, Albany Patriots is a pretty cool name for a team.
Yeah, I mean, a team called the Patriots. I guess this is the only time I'll wear Patriots.
Yeah. That's
other than my flag football days when I played for the team called the Stockade Patriots. I was a Patriot for a while, yeah. But for me, I've seen this movie numerous times. It was the first time Dustin had seen it. I kind of wanted to see what he thought the movie was. His thoughts of the movie were. I love this movie, and not just because I'm a hockey fan, but there's some jocular humor. If you're someone who's into jocular humor, likes the antics in the locker room, likes the antics in the bus. I kind of want. I would have wanted to ask Doug Smith if there was an actual piss hole in the back of the bus instead of a lavatory. I hope not either. But I know he only played one game in the AHL, so I don't know if they have that in the back of the bus there. But maybe in the ECHL days, because they still do a lot of traveling on the bus, depending on where you go. I would have loved to ask him that question. But it's an inspiring story. It's a story about a guy who just came out of relative obscurity and literally fought his way to the second highest level in North American professional hockey. Even if he was in those games, if he was in like 3 of those games during his career, and I'll look up those stats.
Well, and that's the thing. I think when you hit the nail on the head here, it is an inspiring story. And the one thing that this movie did, and just to go to the comments section for a second, Dr. Lady asks, so is this also a bro movie? My answer is yes. I would classify it as a bro movie. That's what it's shooting for. It does have moments where it is more than that, but yeah, it is kind of a bro movie. But it's an inspiring in the way that, and it also taught me, because we all know what the term goon is, right?
Yeah.
But there's a science to it, and there's a method to it, and you can see the movie does a great job of illustrating that Ross Ray was a master. He was a master at getting under the other team's skin, protecting his players, but also, kind of playing some chess out there and getting it. And if you watch the movie, you'll see what I'm talking about. So there's more to the goon than meets the eye. I think that's an undertone of this movie.
Yeah, and it's what's funny is that the guys who, when I was a chaplain, some of the guys who usually came out to chapel were the so-called goons, the enforcers, the protectors. They were also some of the nicest guys on the team. Some of the hockey players in general are pretty nice. They're also kind of aloof. Like the people the guys who will actually stick around, talk with you, have a conversation with you, are the goons, are the enforcers, are the guys who protect their teammates. And it's really exemplified, and I'm going to do a spoiler alert here. There is that scene where Doug's walking around in downtown St. John's after a long bus trip from Quebec, where he has to sit in the back with the piss hole. He's just after learning he gets suspended by the league for that incident in Quebec, and they meet in a restaurant at 3:00 in the morning. Ross is just sitting there reading the hockey news or whatever version of that is, and they have a conversation. And Ross just says, "Look, you're just a piece of meat." I'm paraphrasing here. He just says, "You're just a piece of meat. You're just a goon. You're just a guy who just kind of goes out there, fights when he needs to." And Doug adds some depth to the situation because he's kind of new. He's new to the game. Ross has been playing the game since he was basically came out the womb. And I hate to stereotype my Canadian friends, and I have Canadian friends, but they came out with with skates on their feet. Came out the womb with skates on their feet. They're skating by the time they're at the hospital. So he's playing a character who's played this game since he was 3, 4, or 5 years old, while Doug is new to the game. And he's got a role. He's finally found some purpose, because at the beginning of the film, he's kind of just wandering through life as a security guard, just kind of filling in roles here and there. He's not. He mentions in the film, "I'm not as smart as my parents." His parents are doctors. His brother's a doctor, and Doug's just kind of wandering through life. But he has a purpose, and he says, "No, you're wrong. I'm not just a piece of meat. I am somebody who protects. I do what's best for my team. And this is one of the best lines in the movie. If they need me to bleed, then I'll bleed." Which Ross says in his, I guess it's farewell speech in his last home game in St. John's that night.
Yeah, a little nod.
little nod to Doug. But there is some depth because you kind of go behind the scenes of the characters take you behind the scenes of who these guys are. And there's a couple of documentaries I'm going to recommend. Ice Warriors is one of them. It talks about it profiles primarily Chris Nyland, who played with the Montreal Canadiens, won a Stanley Cup in 1986, Montreal, New York Rangers, and Boston. And the Doug Probert story, you also want to watch the document. And he's by the grace of God, he's clean and sober. He cleaned up his act after he retired from the game. He had a radio show at TSN 690 in Montreal for a very long time. And he would tell you stories. Now he's got his own podcast. He'll tell you stories about his days as a Montreal Canadien or a Boston Bruin or New York Ranger. And then you got the Bob Probert story, which is a really sad story. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2015 or 2016. That's around the time the documentary came out shortly after his death. But it talks about his career and all the things that he had to deal with, the drug addiction, the alcoholism, which I wouldn't say led to his downfall or led to his death, although those factors could have attributed to his unfortunate death. But these guys are human. And I think Jay Baruchel and Evan Goldberg, who wrote the film, who did the screenplay for the film, they did a fantastic job for portraying the human side of the Enforcer. And it's also exemplified in the sequel, Goon, Last of the Enforcers, because you don't really see this role anymore in the NHL. You don't see the role of Enforcer. Today's game took away that role. It's an important role. And I've noticed, I'm going to say this as a New Jersey Devils fan, and there's a reason. I think the primary reason why Jack Hughes has missed so many games over the last 3 seasons, including this season, because he doesn't have that enforcer to protect him. Wayne Gretzky had the enforcer to protect him. He had Marty McSorley back in the day, the aforementioned Bob McSorley. All those guys, all those superstars back in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, they had the enforcer to protect them so they can go out and do their thing as a scorer. And now that particular, it's like the tight end in the CFL, it's like the running back in the NFL. Those positions, because the game has evolved, those positions, those roles are quickly disappearing. Yeah, and I think this is kind of both the Goon and its sequel, Last of the Enforcers. Those are a love letter to that position of old, because that position, that the Goon, the Enforcer, that role is going extinct.
I would agree with you there, because it used to be you could always figure out who the team's so-called enforcer was, when you're playing, and you would always want to see them lock it up, but it was always kind of comforting too that they were out there to protect the stars, like the reason I was able to spot George Laraque immediately is because he was protecting some of those Oilers players back in the day. He was protecting Les Hemsky. He was protecting some of those more quote unquote finesse guys. But I think if we go to the comments, I think Sick Diggy, which welcome Sick. I tried to fix my hair a little bit for you today because I didn't want I didn't want you coming at me.
You didn't want to get added.
Yeah, but he says the let's not forget about the problems, the history of concussions and CTE in hockey, and also the issue of painkillers and prescription pill abuse.
Yeah, so
that probably is part of the reason of the quote unquote phasing out of the position, perhaps.
No, it's part of it. And I'll say this, I'll give credit where credit's due. The NHL has done a spectacular job in reducing the number of concussions in hockey. You don't really see a concussion injury much anymore. But yeah, I mean, I just, this movie was it's a love letter to a position that's no longer. It's probably not going to be. Although if you're a New York Rangers fan, you could argue that Matt Rempe is an enforcer because he's a freaking giraffe on skates, like Zdeno Chara was. He's like 6'7", 6'8".
Yeah,
and he looks like a giraffe on skates, but he does his role effectively. So, yeah, it's a letter to days gone by of the old systems, of the old positions, of old time hockey. Putting on the gloves, putting on the foil, coach.
yeah.
you don't see that anymore. So, I mean, right now, right, for me, we're going to do our movie rankings for the season as we go along. But Goon, obviously number 1 right now because it's the only movie we reviewed.
Yep.
And actually, while we're at it, we might as well announce what we're going to do, what we're going to review for our next movie. And that is the 2013 film Rush, not to be confused with the 1991 film of the same title, which stars Jennifer Jason Leigh. But this one, this one is. We'll bring up the we'll bring up the trailer. We'll watch the trailer together. This one doesn't have a red band like last week's Goon trailer. So I previewed it. I made sure it was okay.
Yeah, we're okay here.
We're okay here, but I'll go ahead and I'll show that theatrical trailer. It's courtesy of Universal Pictures. It's on YouTube, so it's courtesy of them. So let me go ahead and present the trailer. This is what we'll be watching this weekend, so we'll review it for next week on No Ticket Required. Let's go ahead and take a listen and watch the trailer together.
The closer you are to death, the more alive you feel.
You're James, aren't you?
Yes. Who's that?
It's Niki Lauda. He's just been signed by Ferrari.
He's a nobody.
Look at the way he's driving, like an old man.
Right now, with zero incentive, why would I drive fast?
Because I'm asking you to.
This is an incredible battle between these two great drivers.
Next time, I'll have you.
No chance. You're just a party guy. That's why everybody likes you.
Yes, I know, I'm terrible.
No, you're not terrible. You're just who you are at this point in your life.
To be a champion, it takes more than just being quick.
You have to really believe it. I've been waiting for this my whole life.
I can beat this guy, trust me.
He's consistent, dependable. Will he put his life on the line the day that really matters?
Welcome to the racing grudge match of the decade.
World champion Niki Lauda, trapped in a searing inferno of 800 plus degrees.
Talk to me, James.
Don't go to men who are willing to kill themselves driving in circles looking for normality.
What did your wife say when she saw your face? She said, you don't need a face to drive, you just need the right foot.
I feel responsible for what happened.
Watching you win those races, while I was fighting for my life, you were equally responsible for getting me back in the car.
42 days after his near-fatal accident, Niki Lauda will race here today.
More powerful than the fear of death is the will to win.
Well, I'm sufficiently pumped for that now. No, that's it. And I know, I know why I picked it. I was like, it was a Ron Howard movie, and I've come to realize over the years, whether you love Ron Howard or hate him, I personally love the way he makes a movie. Most Ron Howard films I enjoy. I'm excited for this one. And when you asked me about the order of the movie, I will confess the true reason that I picked Rush is because my buddy Derek is going up to Montreal for an F1 race this weekend. So I was like, oh, F1's going on. Let's do it. You know?
I was just thinking about last year when we reviewed Ford versus Ferrari. That was my number one film last summer.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but that was my number one movie last summer. And I don't know if it'll compare to this one. Although this involves F1 more than it does the Grand Prix, the Le Mans, 24 hours of Le Mans, which is a completely different race than Formula One. But I'm looking forward to this one. Thor's in it.
Yeah,
Thor is in this movie, and it's also got Daniel Bruhl, who's a German actor. He plays Niki Lauda. So unfortunately both James Hunt and Niki Lauda are no longer with us. So Niki Lauda passed away in 2019. I think James Hunt passed away in the 1980s. Let's take a look here.
Oh wow,
1993.
Oh yes,
when he passed away. But I remember watching a documentary on the rivalry, not this movie, but the rivalry itself, but a documentary about the rivalry, and I think it was either Grand Tour or Top Gear who talked about it and how unbelievably driven, because both these men drove one another. We'll talk about it more next week after we've seen it, because I haven't seen the movie yet, but I remember the documentary. But I remember the documentary, the segment on either Top Gear or Grand Tour, when it talks about the rivalry these two had and how they, no pun intended, drove each other to get better and try to beat each other every single race. So I'm looking forward to the theatrical version of it. So that'll be next week's film. So watch it. So if you're watching on the live on the replay, or if you're watching on the podcast, or if listening to it on the podcast side, we want you to join us. Watch the movie. Come review the movie with us. We'll talk about it next week. But for now, that was this week's installment of No Ticket Required. All right, so we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to have Dustin talk about his Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals, and we're also going to talk a little bit of baseball. And I totally forgot about this one news item that we're going to touch up on just briefly before we get to those topics. But we'll take a quick commercial break, so please stick around for more No Credentials Required. There it is.
Righteous Felon Craft Jerky is the official jerky of Belly Up Sports. For over a decade, Righteous Felon Craft Jerky has led the American meat snack revolution by concocting delicious, adventurous, U.S.-sourced jerky recipes for uncompromising carnivores across the country. With 15 different flavors to choose from, Righteous Felon has all jerky lovers covered, and by using promo code BELLYUP, you will get 15% off your purchase at righteousfelon.com. Do your taste buds a favor today and rip into a bag of Righteous Felon jerky.
Hey, you know what makes a great movie snack?
What's that?
Righteous Felon Craft Jerky. I mean, we talked about you touched upon it last week about your favorite go-to movie snacks. I know you're big into popcorn, and Dustin, you make a fantastic kettle corn.
Oh, thank you, sir.
But if you're looking for a high protein, low sugar snack, Righteous Felon Beat Craft Jerky is the snack for you. And if you go to righteousfelon.com, you can find yourself a wide variety of flavors to try, flavors to choose from, whether it be their craft jerky, their turkey jerky, the dried meat known as biltong, their meat sticks, which their primary ingredient is not pulverized chicken, it's beef. Unlike some other slim beef sticks that like to call themselves meat sticks, the primary ingredient is not pulverized chicken. It's 100% beef. And it's delicious. It's my mid-morning snack. It's a nice little protein boost for my mid-morning before lunchtime. But if you go to righteousfelon.com, get yourself some nice beef jerky, you enter promo code BELLYUP at checkout. You get 15% off your order. But that's not it. That's not just it. If your order is $50 or more, and that includes the promo code, you get free shipping.
Gotta love free shipping.
Gotta love free shipping. So get yourself to righteousfelon.com. Order yourself some great beef jerky. Hey, and I just wanted to know, hey, this gets the no credentials required seal of approval. We haven't seen puppers in a while. I had to break them out.
No, it's been a while. I think we haven't seen puppers since like around the holidays.
Yeah,
I think it was like once after that, but
Yeah, and Jersey G joining us. She says Righteous Felon Jerky, hungry college student approved. She sent a nice care package to her daughter, who's at college, and she said she loved it. She loved it. So it's hungry college student approved. It's also no credentials required seal of approval too. So get yourself some beef, some craft jerky, righteousfelon.com, promo code BELLYUP at checkout. All right, Dustin, NBA finals start on Thursday. You've got not only one, but two of your favorite teams in their respective finals. We'll talk about the Stanley Cup final on Saturday because that's when it starts. I'm working on getting a guest for Saturday morning. Hopefully she responds very soon. We can get her on the show. But I know you're the bigger basketball fan among the two of us. We don't really cover NBA on the show.
Yeah.
But I want to get your thoughts about the Dallas Mavericks going to only their second NBA finals in team history.
Well, it's so I'm going to tell you because I am nervous. I am excited but nervous, and there seems to be a lot of confidence coming from Dallas fans coming into the series, and I would need to remind you that Boston is a very good team. I think it's going to be a good series. The atmosphere for Kyrie having to play again in Boston.
Oh, no.
Those fans are going to be on him. Because let me tell you, his time in Boston did not go too well, and then he did some things when he returned to Boston as a member of the Brooklyn Nets. I know that pains you, Ryan. I'm sorry. As a member of the Brooklyn Nets,
should be back in New Jersey.
That did not make Boston fans very happy, but it's a different version of Kyrie coming back now. I truly believe that. As I've said, I've apologized to him multiple times. The help that he has had and the impact that he has had on this team is immense. But I am extremely nervous, Ryan, because you might have forgotten, it is not the Mavericks' second NBA Finals appearance in history. It is their third. Because in the magical year of 2006, the weird combination of teams that I like, right? I like the Yankees, I like the Mavericks, I like the Seahawks, and I like the Oilers.
Mm-hmm.
This year, I have the Oilers in the Stanley Cup Finals, and I have the Mavs in the NBA Finals. Now, this happened once before, and it was in 2006. When the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl and lost against the Steelers, the Dallas Mavericks went to the NBA Finals and were up big on the Dwayne Wade Shaq-led.
That's right. That's right. I forgot they went in 2006.
And then the Mavs choked. I'm sorry. I just peeked my mic. I heard it, but I was so fired up. I'm still. Now they probably have a statue of Dwayne Wade down in Miami. If they don't, they should. I have no issues with Dwayne Wade, but along with that Dwayne Wade statue, they should put up a Bennett Salvatore statue because he was calling every single. If Dwayne Wade got breathed on, he was getting free throws at the line. Okay, so Bennett Salvatore, you got to give him an assist for that Miami Heat title. But then we had the run in 2011 with Dirk Nowitzki, and the way that Luka is playing and the way that Luka and Kyrie are working together is reminiscent of that magical run that Dirk Nowitzki went on in 2011 with that Mavericks team. And he had the current coach of the Dallas Mavericks, Jason Kidd, help running the point for that Mavericks team. And I am very nervous. I think it's going to be a good series. I think Derek Lively has a chance to make a difference in the series. PJ Washington and Gafford have both had impacts in previous series. They're going to have to show up big again. But I am very nervous about my Mavericks. But also, I feel like Luka has matured. This is not the same Luka from when they advanced in the bubble. I think he is ready for this moment, and I think with the support of Kyrie and also the wild card in Kyrie, because let's not forget how good Kyrie was in those Cleveland Cavaliers, that Cleveland Cavaliers final series where he helped LeBron James unseat.
And we heard the greatest radio call of all time.
Yes.
I'm desperately trying to find that radio call. I cannot find it worth anything. I can't remember the radio announcer's name.
Yeah,
but
I can't.
We're listening to it on the way back from a Major League Soccer game. We watched New York Red Bulls and Seattle Sounders.
Yes.
And at the time, Dustin, they had Xbox as their jersey sponsor.
Yes.
I don't know who their jersey sponsor is now, but I think after that year they went with Zulily.
I think so.
And you wouldn't be caught dead wearing that jersey.
No, the Xbox logo was bad enough. I remember you asked me, "Oh, are you going to get a jersey?" And I said no, because I don't want a big Xbox logo across it. But apparently, that would have been the better pick. So I am there. There is a little bit of confidence, but I'm also a realist. I know the Celtics. It's not going to be an easy series, and I think that the Celtics do have more quote-unquote stars that can show up. And like I said, I think Kyrie's going to be a bit of a wild card. Just like I said, it's a different series, it's a different version of him that's showing up. But I know those Boston fans, they're going to get on him. There's going to be a lot going on. I'm excited for the series, but nervous because Boston is a great team. They got a great GM, great coach. They've been a problem in the East for a few years now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I did research, and the Seattle Sounders jersey sponsor is Providence, which is a non-profit health system located in Seattle. So, if you want to get yourself a jersey. It doesn't have Xbox, doesn't have Zulily. It's now Providence. So you got at least have that.
Yeah.
Before we move on to our next topic, I do want to take the trip to this comment section we got comments rolling in. We got lots of comments rolling in. Dr. Lady says Jared Jones, the Pirates pitcher, has great hair. No offense, Ryan.
Jared Jones does have great hair, and I have him on my fantasy team too. He's been doing great because he's one of the few pitchers that actually does well on my team. My team kind of stinks this year.
And actually, the Pirates just beat. They just ended their game with the Dodgers, and they beat the Dodgers. I'm trying to look for the score, and I'm trying to look to see if Jared Jones' stats were for this game. But continuing on, it's Debbie. So Carrie Fisher is Debbie Rowland's daughter. It's Eddie Fisher and Debbie Rowland's daughter. I combined the names, so it's my fault. It's my fault. The documentary I was talking about Enforcers was The Last Gladiators that had Chris Nyland in it. Jersey G saying, I was just thinking about how I keep missing you guys, and yay, I'm here. Hey, welcome.
Happy to have you back.
That's right, Jersey G. Happy to have you back. And we know that your daughter loves Righteous Felon Craft Jerky. Again, like we said, Hungry College Student approved. Sick Diggies joining us from Norway, friend of the show, says, "You look adorable." Most. And he said, "More of a reason to roast you." That's why.
Thank you so much.
He's just jabbing you out of love.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Sick. Happy to have you here as always.
Dr. Lee says Daniel Bruhl is an amazing actor. He plays Nicky Lauda in Rush. Jersey G saying, finally, a YouTuber smart enough to have YouTube Premium. So many others are like, hold on an ad. And I'm thinking, dude, just pay the $30 and use it as a business expense. It's actually cheaper than I thought. It's only, I think, $13.99 a month. So,
okay.
So it's not that bad. Maybe if I ever decide to make no credentials required in LLC, I'll have to use that. Definitely use that as a business expense. So Kevin, my lawyer, if you're talking, yeah, we'll talk. Six saying, all right, rest in peace to both James Hunt and Nicky Lauda. Talk about a rivalry and camaraderie in Formula One. That's for sure. It's one of those. Every racing league has a rivalry that defines an era.
Mm-hmm.
Schumacher and insert racer here. I just remember Michael Schumacher because he dressed up as the Stig one time for Top Gear. But yeah, every racing league has an era where there's one rivalry that stands out above the rest, or one driver that is that stands out above the rest. Dr. Lady says Ford versus Ferrari stars Adam Driver. Heart. And she also says Ryan is a tall hobbit with his regular snack breaks throughout the day. Yes, you need snacks. Yes, and you also need breakfast, second breakfast, 11 Z's, afternoon tea, lunch, supper, dinner, dessert. I don't know. I'm just going through the whole ring. The whole rigmarole. Sick Dicky says breaking news. Oh, breaking news. Hold on. Let me do this right. We have some breaking news from Sick Dicky. And this is because we showed Puppers the seal of approval. He says the seals at Bron Joy Juice, and a new and even more new and even more lucrative contract. Details have not been disclosed, but the seals union rep has stated the union's joy in the new deal. He also says, meanwhile, Sick Diggy will be making money hand over fist with a new contract to his seals being used as studs at the Bron Joy Juice factory. And speaking of the NBA, Playmaker, get plug in here. We have our preview for the finals tomorrow at 5 p.m. I believe it's going to be on his channel, the Playmaker's blog network. I think Dustin might enjoy how it puts parts together.
Yeah, I might have to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll drive home from work extra fast.
And Sick also asks, are you a PC, Sony, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch gamer?
I am a Sony PlayStation and Nintendo Switch gamer. What about you, Sick?
He also said that's Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill in the 90s. Yeah, I remember Michael Schumacher. I remember his name exclusively just because he was a Ferrari driver, and also he was the Stig. Made a one-time appearance as the Stig on Top Gear. So speaking of rest in peace, I want to mention real quick.
Oh yeah.
Yesterday we lost a legendary football player, NFL former lineman Larry Allen passed away suddenly. I noticed this yesterday afternoon. The Dallas Cowboys had announced. I guess he passed away in his sleep while he was on vacation, which makes it 10 times, which just makes it so bad. And he was only 52 years old.
Yeah.
And when we talked last week about the death of Bill Walton and Grayson Andrews, it was just, but this one hits hard because I remember Larry Allen growing up. Some of the legendary feats he had as an offensive lineman. 14 seasons, 198 games, was considered one of the best linemen in the NFL during his era. Once chased down a linebacker during Monday Night Football, and there's footage of him bench pressing 700 pounds.
Yeah.
This guy was a monster.
Oh, yeah, and I can't remember who, but it was a notable D lineman, and it kind of takes the teeth out of the story, but this is just something I'm remembering either from a documentary or something else that I watched, and they said, who did you fear? And he said Larry Allen. Just couldn't get an edge on him. The guy was immovable, and he's part of that Dallas Cowboy offensive line that was such a big part of the Cowboys' success in the 90s. And he like you said, Ryan, his age, I think, this just hits hard because, I'm 40 years old, about to be 41 in a few short weeks here. And 52 is not that far away.
No, it's not for me either. I'm turning 47 in 2 months. So
yeah.
So I'm getting up there, and I've got a brother who's turning 50 this year, and my sister-in-law just turned 50. So, I mean, I don't know what the cause of death is. I know that he died. see something that he passed away in his sleep. If he passed away like Reggie White did, he passed away in his sleep. I think he had a heart attack in his sleep.
Yeah.
I know he suffered from sleep apnea for a very, very long time before that. But I remember, but I will say this too, and this is important for men, especially. And I'll tell you from personal experience. About 10 years ago, I got a cardiac CT because I thought I was having some heart issues myself. Thankfully, nothing came about. The plaque level in my arteries was less than 1%.
Oh, there you go.
But I was scared because I'm like, what's going on over here? And it just turns out it was just acid reflux.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, like, man, a cardiac CT scan, just to look at your aortic chambers, look at if there's any kind of blockage, that'll save your life. And I remember there was a story I was watching Rod Peterson a couple weeks ago. He had a kicker, a former CFL kicker, who not only had a stroke, but also had a widowmaker heart attack.
Oh, geez.
If you don't know what a widowmaker is, it's exactly what it sounds like. It makes a widow out of the wife because the heart attack is so bad. It's a severe heart attack. But he had both a stroke and a widowmaker heart attack, and he's still alive.
Yeah.
But this is for my guys out there, like my dudes out there. Especially as you get older, when you go into your 30s, when you go into your 40s, get a cardiac CT scan. It doesn't cost very much. And actually, the doctor who saw me, he waived my cost.
Oh, wow.
Because I was so young to get the test, but I was a little bit bigger back then too. But this is important. If he passed away the way I think he passed away, I would encourage you, go get a CT, get a cardiac CT. Just take a look at what's in there, and then take preventative measures after that. I'm just going to encourage you in that regard. After another sports legend passed away, and this was so unexpected. I did not see this coming. As I think his teammates would attest to, as his family would attest to. We didn't see this coming.
Yeah. I think it was a shock to a lot of people, and that's very well said. And that's the thing. And just in general, to everybody, as you get older, focus in on your health a little bit more. When you're younger, you kind of feel like you're bulletproof. You feel like you got everything ahead of you. Stay on top of things, and don't be afraid. Even if you feel like it might be overkill, don't be afraid to get some stuff checked out. If you notice any sudden changes or anything abnormal that doesn't feel like you, go get it checked out. Don't be afraid to go to the doctor's office. It's tough for a lot of people. No, and the best investment you can make is in your own health too. So, rest in peace to Larry. My condolences to his family. My condolences to any of our cred heads out there who are Dallas Cowboys fans, because he was a longtime Cowboy, and this was a shock to see. So yeah.
Hopefully, this is something we can take away from this. Is get yourself checked out. It cost you a couple bucks. So what? It's well worth the investment. Well worth your time. Well worth the investment of time and the money to do to invest in your health.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to move on and talk about a incident in Major League Baseball. Tucupita Marcano, who played for the San Diego Padres, spent last year with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's been suspended for life from Major League Baseball. So now Pete Rose has some exclusive company in being one of only two players or two managers or former player and a manager. And now this player, an active player, are now banned for life from Major League Baseball for gambling. And I'm going to take a gander into, and this wasn't the only suspension Major League Baseball announced yesterday. There's been other players who have been suspended by the league for similar betting practices. Not many familiar names unless you're a fan of the team that they played on. Those players have been suspended for a year. But let's take a look at some of the crazier bets This is a crazy stat. This is courtesy of Front Office Sports. This is the stats from Marcano's betting, and I don't know what they're getting their details from, whether it's from FanDuel or DraftKings or any other sports book company. So he bet a total amount of $150,000. Of that $150,000, he spent $87,319 on Major League Baseball. His average amount on his bets were $378. He made 231 Major League Baseball bets, and I guess many of these bets were while he was spending time on the injured list last year with the Pirates. That's the crazier part of it all. It's very similar to what happened with Calvin Ridley that got him suspended for all of 2022. The number of bets on Pirates games, which is who he played for at the time, 25. This is the craziest part. This one amazes me because this guy is worse at betting than I am. The number of bets Major League Baseball bets that he won, out of the 231 bets, he won only 4.3% of his bets.
Ooh, that makes it sting all the more. Like, it'd be one thing if he was raking in money from the bets, but the fact that he only won so few, oof. Well, now he has more time to study up on gambling because he can't play baseball anymore.
No, and the fact that a lot of these teams, a lot of these leagues make the rules so clear. So clear. And we talked about, I talked about Shohei Ohtani a couple months ago with his scandal and his interpreter getting into trouble for betting, for stealing money to go into gambling debts. Although you could have theories that he made those bets on Shohei Ohtani's behalf, but we're not putting our tinfoil hats.
Yeah.
But at some point, either the athletes have to learn you can't do this while you're on the injured list. You can't bet on sports, let alone the sport you play for and the team you play for.
Yeah.
While you're on the injured list. But this makes me wonder. This kind of poses a question: is it time for teams to reevaluate their sportsbook policies for their players? Because we saw what happened with Calvin Ridley, suspended the entire NFL season in 2022, while he was on leave of absence. Due to some mental health issues, and then you saw other players get suspended. Jameson Williams got suspended for the first 6 games of the year because he was on a sports book while on team grounds, while at the team facility. There's another player who the Lions actually released. There's a couple of Washington Commanders. The same thing happened with him, but this gentleman was on the injured list and been on 25 games of his own team.
Yeah.
So I'm posing the question to, and maybe this is more of an open-ended question, but I kind of want to get your opinion on this. Dustin, do you think is it time for teams in any league, whether it be in the major, the minor, any professional league, is it time for teams to reevaluate the sportsbook policies for their players?
I would say it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, because I completely understand the league's fears. Ever since the Tim Donaghy situation, people's suspicions were confirmed. It's part of the reason why they don't want betting near sports, because there's the whole the fact that the mob was in league with it. I can't remember. It's been too long since I've seen the 30 for 30, but it happened. They had point shaving scandals to change the outcome of games. So I can understand sports hesitancy to get into the league, but I think, or to have gambling associated with any sports league, but I think there's ways to kind of curb this a little bit, because players are human. They're going to want to engage in certain things. But I think if you revise the rules to say, okay, you can gamble, but it has to be on a sport that is not one you play, and you can only gamble during the off season. If they give them a little like give and allow them to be human beings and imbibe, but also keep the purity, and there's no way to police it. There would still be somebody that would violate these terms, but relax the terms a little bit. Because I do understand why the sports leagues don't want any sort of gambling associated, but it's part of it now. And the fact that everybody's got one of these in their hands, everybody's got a smartphone, they're able to, it's so accessible now. So I would say relax the rules a little bit and say gamble, but it has to be on a sport that you do not play, and you can only gamble during the off season. So that's kind of my quick thoughts on it here.
No, I get it. And to a point, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. You need to give the player some leeway to have some freedom. But at the same time, why are you suspending players for gambling and deservedly so for Marcano? If you're betting on your own team, even if you're injured, you should be suspended for life. That's part of the rules. It's part of the punishment.
Yep.
And I don't know what these other players got suspended for. They were all suspended for 1 year. But there comes a point too where you have to say to these leagues, why are you taking so much money from these sportsbook companies why are you taking so much money from these sportsbook companies while you're suspending players for participating on sportsbook apps? Now, I don't know if Marcano went through a sportsbook app or he went through a third-party bookie, which you don't see a whole lot of anymore. I mean, sportsbook is legal in Pennsylvania. I believe Rivers holds a lot of the properties for sportsbook in that state. And it's still illegal in a lot of different states, although after the Supreme Court ruling in 2017, I want to say, a lot of these states are turning things around because they realize, we can make money from this. So at the same time, though, I think there's going to be you're going to see a point, and this is Reistradamus saying here. I'm not going to get the Thunder. I'm not going to get the Thunder effect because it interferes with us talking.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a point where if you're a team that sees a lot of other players from other teams being suspended because they're abusing their privilege, I think there's going to be outright banning. There's going to be outright banishment in their team, in their contracts. And the players associations will be against it. But if you want to keep your player, there's going to be a point, whether in baseball, whether in football, basketball, hockey, there's going to be a point where there's going to be a big name player. There's going to be a superstar.
Oh, yeah.
Leagues love to protect their superstars. But there's going to be a point where a superstar does something so egregious off the field with sportsbook that that the leagues are not going to have a choice but suspend these players for 6 games, half a season, a full season, a lifetime ban, like we just saw with Marcano. I mean, I don't know. Now, granted, most of these bets, and actually all these bets, if it's true, all these bets were made while he was on the injured list.
Yeah.
But you're still participating in team activities while you're on the injured list. You're still getting treatment. You're still doing rehab. You're still taking batting practice, or if you're a pitcher, you're throwing, or you're participating in fielding practice. You're still part of a team if you're on the injured list.
Yep.
But back to my primary point, I still think you're going to see a time and a place where a team is going to say, you know what? We've seen too many of these cases where our guys on our team get suspended. We don't want it to happen to our most important players, let alone utility fielders, relief pitchers, guys who can be DFA'd or sent down in the minors at the drop of a hat. We don't want this happening. We're just gonna say no, you can't do sportsbook while you're off the field during off-season activities. I mean, even in off-season, I mean, yeah, probably in off-season activities, yeah, go right ahead, because you're not making bets on your sport.
Yep.
Or on your team.
Yep.
But during the season, we're not going to allow it.
Mm-hmm. No, and I will agree with you. The hypocrisy by the leagues is rampant by, prohibiting this, but yet having lucrative sponsorship deals and everything else. But I also need to throw the onus back on the players, and I think Dr. Lady puts it succinctly in the comments. Part of their job requires them to not gamble. If they can't follow it, the players should lose their jobs. Now, I would question, if I had a contract and I was playing baseball, I was getting paid to do a thing that I presumptively loved more than almost anything in the world, and a position that most people would kill for. Why would I even? Is the gambling, is the high that you get from gambling worth so much that you could let a little money ride? Why not just wait until you're done playing? And I get it. Gambling addiction is a real thing. There's, it's a very positive, powerful thing. But Michael Jordan, and we don't know if he ever, we don't know if anything would have come out in this stuff, but his gambling post basketball has been well documented, because in his own words, he said it's the only thing that replicates the adrenaline rush of playing the game for him is gambling.
Yeah, and that's true for any kind of addiction. It's a rush. It's a rush. Like you take that hit of, you drink that alcohol. It'll numb you, but at the same time, it's like you can't live without it.
Yeah,
it's like getting that. It's like the addict with the pill or the heroin needle, or even to a certain extent, a joint.
Yeah,
because there are certain strains of marijuana now that are very addictive. It's like anything that gives you a sort of an adrenaline rush, a dopamine boost. It'll be addictive, can make you into an addict. And gambling is this, and you're absolutely right. Gambling can do the same thing.
Yeah.
So
but it just boggles my mind, because this guy, he threw away his career now as a baseball player for $150,000. So I mean, I hate to put it this way, but I hope it was worth it to you, because it seems, and it's easy for me to sit here and wag my finger, in a lecturing tone while I'm on the airwaves, but that seems a paltry sum to give up the chance to play a game that you obviously love, because you obviously worked very hard to get to where you are. The baseball minor league system, no minor league system is easy to get through, but the baseball minor league system is arduous to get through and takes a lot of time. And quite frankly, that's why if there's a multi-sport athlete, they will often choose football or basketball if they have the shot, because there is a better chance that they will get to the highest level faster. Baseball is arduous and slow and can take a lot of time to get there. And you got there and you threw it away because you couldn't resist gambling.
Yeah. And it goes back, and also it comes to the point where off the field, off the practice field, off the playing field, if you're in a game or if you're at practice, professional athletes have a lot of time on their hands outside, when they're not traveling, when they're not practicing, when they're not playing during the game. They have a lot of free time to do other stuff. And sportsbook is going to be one of those things that Major League Baseball and the Players Association will have to look at, and other leagues will have to look at as well, and just say, okay, we need to rein this in. We need to rein this in, because, like I said, eventually, I hate to be a broken record, but eventually a big time player is going to be caught, and he's going to be suspended for a very, very long time. I mean, I know we had that. I remember in The Last Dance, they talked about Jordan's year off, and the conspiracy theory was that Michael Jordan was serving a 1 year suspension by David Stern because of his gambling problems. But all those gambling issues were off the field. They were mostly playing poker at the casino, on the golf course.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're writing a check for $50,000 to somebody because you lost skins, well, that's on you.
Yeah.
First of all, don't leave a paper trail. And B, don't bet so much.
Yeah.
I know you're your competitor, but the feeling of competition also kind of gives that adrenaline rush, gives that dopamine boost, gives that reward, gives that dopamine reward when you win. But you need other outlets. You need other outlets other than going to the sports book and gambling and betting on games.
Be like Luca. He plays Overwatch. Go do that. Did you ever see that clip? They were playing. There was like a random streamer playing Overwatch, and Luca was in the game.
Or even better, be like Philip Rivers, get married and have 10 kids.
Oh yeah,
keep you occupied. I know other podcasts bust his chops because like, why are you having so many kids?
Yeah, but you know what?
I wonder why.
Yeah,
he's out of trouble. All right, we're gonna take one more trip to the comment section before we get out of here. We're already way over. With our time, but you know what? It's been fun tonight. It's been fun tonight.
Yeah,
we'll say this. Lots of comments in the comment section. Plus, we got our movie reviews. So it's the first of 8. We're also working on a guest for Saturday. Hopefully, we get a yes. But it'll be a great guest. You won't regret it. You won't regret it. Siktagi says that'll do it. Sleep apnea is a great risk to a lot of people, me included. I'm very thankful that I got my sleep apnea treated. Between the appliance that I use and the weight loss too, that helps. My sister's in the room next door. She says unless you're very tired or you're getting sick, you're getting a cold, I don't hear you anymore. And I'm like, yes. Oh, and Dr. Lady said, Jersey D saying Dr. Lady that the Dodgers lost. They lost 1-0 to the Pirates. They got shut out by Jared Jones and company tonight. So, but Dr. Lady says, yeah, that's okay. At least they're still in last place. I'm not sure if I have time to get through all the comments because we're already way over tonight.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh yeah, so Dr. Lady says they can read a book or get a girlfriend instead of gambling, or play video games. Or
easier said than done in some cases.
It's easier said than done for a lot of athletes, and it's sad this happened to happen, but this is an example of what happens when you get caught.
But she is right. Reading a book is very easy. The first one. The second one, not as easy for some.
Well, plus you're going to different cities. I mean, there's that trope of baseball players having multiple wives or multiple girlfriends in different cities.
Yeah, which that's dicey. That's a spicy.
That's
meatball.
Dicey territory. That's a super spicy meatball. Sigdigi saying I can recall the issue of gambling bookies and such negatively affecting Pakistani cricket. There have been players who have been banned from the national teams for such scandals. So it's not just baseball this affects. This also affects cricket, which is the English baseball. It's English baseball, as I call it. Or if you want to call WWE, and I heard I heard WWE SummerSlam, one of the big 4 of the pay-per-views, being referred to as Hot WrestleMania the other day.
Oh man, it's going to be a 2-night event now, apparently.
And she also, Dr. Lady, I'll conclude tonight's comments with Dr. Lady. She says pro athletes have it easier than us plebs finding mates. Yeah, that's
very true.
This is very true. It's also I kind of want to go in my room and cry after this, but anyway, just kidding. I'm a happy guy. All right, so before we get out of here, we just want to remind you about our social media channels: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's at NoCardsREQ. Facebook.com/NoCardsREQ. YouTube.com/@NoCardsREQ. If you're watching on repeat on Rumble, thank you. Please leave a follow. Please leave a like. Also follow us. Also leave a like on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter. And also, if you're listening on American Angel Radio and coming soon, Real Wise Radio, We want to thank you for listening, and please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to all of our channels. On the podcast side, subscribe to the podcast. You know where to find them. Anywhere you podcast, rate and review. 5 stars rating would be great. Also, if you're on a platform where you can review, we might even read it on the air. We'll be back on Saturday morning to talk about the Stanley Cup Final, amongst other things. Also, we'll do another week this week in sports ball. But again, in the meantime, we want to thank you for tuning in to No Credentials Required, where you don't need a press pass to talk sports. We're proudly presented by the Belly Up Media Network. For Dustin Henry, I'm Ryan McCarthy. See you on Saturday morning. Time to be determined.
And just to let you know, Dr. Lady, to answer your comment from the beginning of the show, let the starters pitch. Good night, everybody.
Yep. And the Rays suck for doing that opener position and pitching. So yes. Now lead us out.
Good night, everybody.